So it is through this lens that you're now actually viewing the world. And by viewing the world through this lens, you keep yourself stuck in a very toxic cycle where you're continually going around trying to please other people by doing things for them, by ensuring that their needs and their wants and desires are being met at the expense of your own. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. A big thank you to all my new subscribers. I really appreciate you guys, and anyone who likes, shares, comments on my videos, thank you also. So today we're going to be talking about two topics which might seem a little bit dissimilar, but actually they are very related. One being people pleasing and the other being boundaries or lack thereof actually. So oftentimes both of those go hand in hand, and if you struggle with one, you likely struggle with the other as well. So today we're going to be talking all about that and what causes people pleasing, what creates a lack of boundaries, and what we can do to work on those two things so that we're attracting better and healthier relationships into our lives. All right, so first question that you might have is, what's the problem with people pleasing? I mean, everybody does it, right? Everybody at their core wants to have lots of friends and wants to, feel accepted by society and validated and told that they're great. Like if you're making sure that other people around you are happy and this in return gives you all of those things, then what's the problem? Well, on the outside or on the surface, it seems pretty great, right? But at the end of the day, if you're continuously going into this people-pleasing mode, it's often coming at the expense of your own happiness. Your own needs, your own wants, your own desires are oftentimes getting sacrificed or not really being met, because it's really hard to be able to do both. It's hard to be able to ensure that your inner needs and your wants and desires are getting fulfilled while also ensuring that other people's needs, wants, and desires come first, right? Like those two things can't co-occur. So because of that, when we go into people-pleasing mode or we prioritize pleasing other people, that will come at the expense of our own happiness. So why might people even do this? Why would people prioritize other people's needs and wants and desires and ultimately happiness above their own? Well, oftentimes, these people have a deep-seated fear of disapproval and confrontation, and the discomfort that ultimately goes along with both of those things. So they'd often, if not always, rather choose the path of, well, less resistance really, the path where there's more of a smooth sailing in relationships and they're rocking the boat less, so to speak. So this is actually a very fast, very easy way that people can make a lot of friends and can be viewed very positively in their social circles. But like we said before, it often comes at the price of their own happiness. So how does being a people pleaser take away from your own happiness? Well, when you're actually dedicating most of your time, your effort, your energy, and even resources, like financial resources, for example, to ensuring that other people are doing well above your own needs and your wants, that is not allowing you the opportunity to focus on yourself. Ultimately, when you're consistently going into this people-pleasing mode, this can lead to a buildup of resentment, anger. It can even lead to worsening of symptoms like depression or anxiety. So even though it might seem like a great temporary solution to making sure that you're always being viewed in a positive light by others, it actually can create a lot of long-term problems in the end. So now let's get to the more interesting part. What actually causes people-pleasing and ultimately poor boundaries? So in order to understand kind of where we're at now and the patterns that are in our lives right now, we have to go back to our past and think about what kind of environment were we raised in and what kind of care did we receive from our primary caregivers. Oftentimes, when we look back at our past, we'll find that the root cause of this people-pleasing issue that we have, or that we struggle with now, is actually an inner belief that in order to be accepted or loved or validated by other people, we must do something for them. We must provide something for them. Whether that's actually something tangible, like making sure that there's food on the table, or providing money for them, or doing some sort of housework for them, something tangible, right? Or it can be something that's not as tangible, but ultimately is also directly linked to an exchange of worth, such as making sure that you get good grades, making sure that you're well liked by your teachers, or that you're not getting into any fights at school, or that you're not causing any problems for your caregivers. We can then further expand on this core belief and understand it as your worth only stems from what you provide for others and is not inherent for who you are as an individual. So think about that for a second. If that's actually what you're truly believing and what that inner belief system is, that doesn't feel very good, does it? So then you might ask yourself, why is it that I actually have this core belief? Why is it that my inner belief system is so directly tied to external motivators or external validation only? Well, again, looking back at your childhood and looking back at that time period where you were mostly interacting with your primary caregivers is very important. Remember, you might have had caregivers that praised you or showed you love or gave you the attention and the validation that you truly craved when you did something right, when you did something that they were looking for. So, for example, we go back to the grades thing. Let's say that their expectation of you was to get good grades in school, or they had an expectation that every week you would do your chores and that you were quite consistent in doing these things. So what you might find is that when you were younger, if you accomplished these things, if you lived up to these expectations, you were provided with the love and the care that you truly sought. And then when you didn't, let's say you didn't get the grades that you were expected to get, or one week you weren't really able to do all of the chores that they wanted you to do, you were met with the complete opposite. Oftentimes you were met with silence. You might have even been reprimanded. And so you developed over time this understanding, this very clear understanding that you would only receive love when you did certain things for them. And so you quickly learned that if you didn't make sure your primary caregivers, oftentimes your parents, remained content, remained happy with your performance, or were satisfied with what you were providing for them, you learned that this would lead to them retracting their love from you, and you ultimately feeling very empty and disappointed. And then by learning this ultimately created that core and inner belief that now sits with you to this day. The inner belief that in order to receive love from other people, you must do something for them. You must provide something for them. And that ultimately you are not inherently lovable and that you are not inherently worthy. So let that sit with you for a minute. Just sit with that thought and see how that makes you feel. So it is through this lens that you're now actually viewing the world. And by viewing the world through this lens, you keep yourself stuck in a very toxic cycle where you're continually going around trying to please other people by doing things for them, by ensuring that their needs and their wants and desires are being met at the expense of your own. And so when we continue to engage in these kind of toxic patterns or cycles, we only further entrench those beliefs deeper into our subconscious. And those core beliefs that we've been talking about, the ones that might sound like, hey, you know what, I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy of love, unless ... those beliefs are ultimately the automatic drivers and the motivators behind our day-to-day actions, behind our behaviors. So if we expect to, create a different reality for ourselves, or to have different behaviors such that our surroundings change in a positive way, we have to backtrack, right? We have to focus on changing those inner core beliefs. In addition to working on our core beliefs and restructuring them, we're going to actually have to get used to the discomfort that comes along with taking autonomy for our own decision making. Once you come to the decision and the commitment that you're going to be working on these things and working on, that aspect of you that continually tries to people please, and also working on strengthening your boundaries, once you make that commitment, you're going to also have to keep in mind that there will be a period of transition. And that period of transition where you go from, let's say, your old self to your newer self, your more improved self, that transitionary period will not feel very good. You'll likely be faced with, some backlash, perhaps from the people that you associate with, or your friends, or your family. You will also likely be confronted with the discomfort that goes along with disapproval, right? The discomfort that goes along with confrontation. You'll also be faced with doubt. Is what I'm doing the right thing? Is the direction that I'm going the right way? Are these changes or these choices that I've made for myself to ultimately improve my life, are they actually going to reap the rewards that I'm seeking? So ultimately, if you've made this decision to start working on these things, and then you're faced with this transitionary period, which will likely be quite difficult and challenging, I urge you to think about, what are your long-term goals? What are you ultimately seeking by making these changes in your life? Is it that you want to have more autonomy over your decision making? Is it that you want to be less under the control of other people, such as their expectations or what they see your future looking like? Is it that you want to have more inner peace, or the ability to find your own happiness internally rather than always seeking an external measure of validation? So during that challenging time, the transitionary period we were talking about, perhaps what might help is making a list of your goals and what you want to ultimately attain by making these changes in your life. No change will be very easy. There will always be hiccups along the way or little speed bumps, and you're going to have to be able to manage them ultimately. But by always keeping in mind, what is your ultimate goal? What are you actually trying to attain by doing all of this? You'll be able to keep committed. And so by taking this approach little by little, I hope that one day you're going to be able to get to a space and a place, really, where you're going to have firm boundaries and you're going to be able to make decisions without necessarily expecting approval from other people. You won't be guilt-ridden, you won't be filled with anxiety, or you won't even feel ashamed when you do things that are in alignment with your inner needs and your desires. You'll finally be free of other people's opinions of you, and you'll live a life where your happiness comes first. All right, so thank you guys so much again for joining me today. Let me know if you enjoyed this topic, if you want to hear more on this topic, and how we can actually address those core wounds and work on our boundaries more. I'd love to hear from you guys. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Bye now.